have a decent coat because it is cold.
Yeah, I'm gonna get my coat.
Hold on, Hope.
I need to get my coat, my gloves,
That's probably 45 minutes, so I know it's cold, so we can always turn back.
You said going and coming, you said?
Yeah, yeah.
I read that the clay protects in the winter from the cold and in the summer from the heat. How is that the clay?
The combination of the straw and the clay together creates insulation, and it takes a while for heat or cold on the outside of a wall to move through a thick wall, so it gives it creates a moderate temperature inside the dwelling.
But it's just a cover crop to amend the soil and bring in nitrogen. And in the around March, we'll start planting things in here.
Do you know what you guys are gonna be planting?
I'm not in charge, but I think a lot of squash, lettuce. I guess the spring plantings, lettuce and spinach and things like that, and black beans. He's gonna do a bunch of black beans.
Oh,
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Do you guys hire people to come and teach you
So this is really the midpoint of where we expect the village to be. So the village is separated. It's been through some challenging times, but it's still making it.
Do you know how old this is?
I don't.
Do we have it partially covered?
I don't believe so.
I think we might.
See if you can find it. I would
Yeah,
appreciate
I'm there.
that. We got it?
Ba-da-da-ba-ba-ba.
Oh,
Yes, we
super,
do.
super.
Yes, we do. It's kind of amazing to have places to put things. It's like, wow, we have this whole cupboard for glasses. It's amazing.
My name is Hope Horton, and I am one of the founders of the community. I started with the community almost exactly 5 years ago that my husband Paul and I walked the land for the first time on December 30th, 2012. I had the privilege of working with Joanna Macy, who is a eco-philosopher, Buddhist teacher and activist, and she just opened my eyes to the industrial growth society, and the kind of world that we live in, and the harm that it's creating, and developing very creative and wonderful and life-giving and healing ways to help us to face that and feel that and address that and move with that and help become a part of something that will shift our circumstances ultimately. And I worked with her in 2011 for several workshops, and the primary reason that I went to work with her is because I couldn't even deal with thinking about, reading about, knowing about the destruction and the pain and the suffering that was being created worldwide, particularly environmentally. I just had to push it away. I just couldn't face it. And one of the primary parts of her process, which she calls the work that reconnects, is dealing with your grief, recognizing that these are sad times, that what we're facing in the world is hard, it's difficult, and it creates a lot of grief because essentially we're connected with everyone and everything. And the damage that we do is also damage that we do to ourselves. And we feel everything. And yet we tend to live in a way that distracts us from that. And we find ways of distracting ourselves from that. And so working with Joanna Macy was a way to, first of all, enable me to confront my own grief, my own profound and deep grief about what's happening in the world today, and then to develop ways to see things differently and to function differently and to become a part of something new, a new story that wants to awaken. Because I really feel also that there is something that wants to awaken in the world, that we are nature, we are a part of nature, and nature is flowing through us, speaking to us, wanting to wake us up so that we can join with the tremendous power that we each have if we're true to our own natures, and if we are living in concert with and in harmony with what we've been given as human beings. So it started as a very deep longing for me to live differently, and my husband Paul and I have, for all the while that we've been together, over 26 years, have talked about wanting to live in community. And so we finally decided to really look at that and see if that would be possible and if we could take some steps in that direction. And for me, living in community and living in a sustainable community is my way of bringing something positive and something healthy to myself and to the world and to the region that I hope will be inspiring to others if we end up making it, if this ends up happening. So it's the human community as well as the community communion with the earth. At Heartsville, our vision statement is we envision a world where we live in harmony and justice and gratitude with each other and with the land. And that's what we're aiming for, and that's what really deeply moves my heart.
I have something, if you want to eat quickly, I have something already prepared. Yeah.
Well, the name is Paul Voss, and I serve on a number of our, what we call circles, these sort of subcommittees that keep the community running. But I am the operational leader of the circle called the Financial and Legal Circle, which it's probably obvious, deals with financial and legal matters. One problem is we have no lawyers or financial experts serving on that group, so we are, as in a sense, amateurs struggling to keep that part of the community moving forward. So in a sense, Hartsville is two organizations. The community itself, the Eco-Village, that has many, many members, is quite an informal. It's like a club. It's an informal group of people who come together and hold lots of meetings and social events and bring in people to do fun things like videotaping and so on. And then the other piece of Harts Mill is the legal entity, the LLC, which is not an informal club, but is a very formal legal corporate entity. And we have, I believe at the moment, 12 members who are investors in the LLC.
My name is Joe Cole, and I'm an associate member in the community. I've been involved for almost 4 years, about 3.5 years. And I have worked on the membership circle. I've been on the general circle, which is the top governance circle in our group. I've done some work around conflict and facilitation in the group. And this past year I did a big project on sustainability through the Global Eco-Village Network. I took a course, an online course, a 10-month course called Design for Sustainability. And I just finished that up in the fall, and part of that course was a design studio, a case study, where we examined a community together, and we chose Harts Mill. So I got to work with 3 other students in that course, looking very closely and carefully at Harts Mill as a model for sustainable community, and we generated an 80-page report on that, and we've just been sharing the results with the group over the past month or so.
You planning to have like families with children in the community?
Yeah, so our goal is to have a multi-generational community, people of all ages, and I think it would be wonderful for kids to participate in decision making. We have a sociocratic system that delegates decision making to circles, so you need to be on a specific circle to make decisions in specific domains, but those circles should be getting input and guidance from everybody in the community, and I think that should include children as well.
Here. Gotta see if my school is still.
Think about the weather.
I'm Anthony Weston and I'm a member.
You remember?
I have some responsibilities, including primarily now I'm the operational leader of the Planning, Design and Development Functional Circle.
What kind of material your community are planning to use for the building of the houses?
The thing that many of us find very compelling is to build with the actual material present on the land. So you visited, I think, the Cobb Haven, the Cobb
Right.
House. So literally, in a Cobb House, you're building from the very clay of the site itself. So that house is built with the clay that's dug literally next to it. So that's a model of building. Not the only one we will follow, but it's certainly one of them, rather than importing materials from long way away. Or, so there's that, local materials, but also not highly processed materials. So we would want to have, even if it's wood from a site somewhere in North Carolina, let's say, it's natural wood. It's not hyper treated and or let alone facsimile wood, which a lot of so-called wood siding is these days. So that's one thing. Air conditioning is a huge energy or electricity demand. One thing about that, several things. Number one, reduce or eliminate the need for it, and there are plenty of ways in which people traditionally built houses that didn't need to be air conditioned because they didn't have air conditioning. So necessity being the mother of invention, parent of invention, I mean. They would, for example, build houses whose first floors were concrete or stone and were at least partly buried so that they were in contact with the ground below the first foot or two of the ground level, and that stays much cooler than the air, 55, 60 year round pretty much in this climate. So automatically you have the cool coming through. Houses built for good ventilation so that when they start heating up, the air moves through the house, so you have to have a high window for it to escape from and a low window for the cooler air, let's say, on the north side of the house to enter. These are just simple design factors. Designing the house for solar gain in the winter, so you get sunlight reaching into the house, but when the sun is higher, In the summer, you don't want the sun in the house, you have overhangs on the roof that cut it off. Again, these are super simple things. They're not super expensive. They're not mechanical ways of compensating for having a badly designed house in the first place, but design it right and you don't need most of these things like air conditioners in this case. Maybe a couple of window units when it gets really hot and we basically need to dehumidify. Those can be run on the solar panels. Interestingly enough, when do you need air conditioners is when the sun's out, right? So when those moments do come, you have your power to run the things. So it's a matter of strategic design, basically, careful design, and this eliminates the need. So the primary move, and this is no news to anybody who thinks about alternative design, the primary moves are to reduce or to rearrange the needs rather than to try to provide what we take to be the needs with some alternative means.
I think that for a long time I've lived on somewhat of the edges of what we call conventional culture, and I think that's really led me to reflect a lot about what is of value in the world. And also I think there should be a lot of concern about the direction that we're going in as a world, where we're increasingly consuming and without much reflection about the consequences to our environment and our communities and our families. And so when the opportunity to create something different came up, we jumped on it. And for a long time I wasn't sure I would want to live in this community. I have a beautiful home and I have a great community and I love the people that I live near. But I very much wanted this idea of world change and a way of living a different life. And very slowly, because I don't give my love very quickly, I came to respect and love the other people who are involved in the community. And so as our vision starts to come into fruition, it makes me feel more and more that I would like to live there. We were already somewhat fringe in our orientation to child rearing, and we wanted our children to be TV-free and peace-loving, so that when they had a conflict, which is inevitable, we wanted them to be able to listen and to think about it and to stand for their position, but also to be able to negotiate to get something that would work for everybody. So we really worked on that. We also wanted our children to be vegetarian, and they definitely agreed with that very strongly. Our 4-year-old one time in the supermarket shouted out, "We don't eat meat, we eat food." And so they were almost militant about their vegetarianism. We also were Jewish and are Jewish, living in a Bible Belt, so that already put us kind of on the outside in the community. And we also, besides being vegetarian, we were low sugar. And then we also tried, and this was in some ways the biggest concern, was for our children to really look at other people as people and to see them as individuals. And so we very much de-emphasized whether somebody was a boy or a girl. They were just a person. And so we really tried to raise them so that they saw people as people and not their sex or their race or their age. And that made them very open and curious about other people, because they saw them as opportunities to learn or grow or connect, rather than, oh, that's a boy, I won't play with him, or that's somebody else, I won't play with her. So those were all of the basis for us, and that led us outside a lot, because our children weren't watching TV and they weren't engaged with other children in a lot of conventional play. So we would go outside and play a lot, and they became very curious, and they loved going outside to balance on logs in the river, or to get their hands into the dirt and see what was growing in the dirt, or look at the at the bark and between the bark and the log. And then we also started to grow things with them. So by the time they were 2 or 3, they were in the garden learning how to grow and really watching as things changed over time.
Do you think you and your husband can live 100% self-sustainable from the land you're going to be living?
No. And that is because we can't grow coffee and we can't grow bananas. And I'm sure there are other things that we won't be able to grow, but I know that we really love chocolate, we really love coffee, and we really love bananas. So though there will be things that we'll have some difficulty doing without, but I think we can grow a large quantity of food. I know we can grow a large quantity of food, and I think we can grow quite a diverse collection of food too.